What is going on, everybody? We are back for another episode of Tornado Tag under the ABJ presents, our ABJ podcast presents myself, ABJ, BP Burke, Lilly on the call here tonight, not on commentary, but on the podcast. So thank you guys for hanging out with us. We're doing it. We did 2 consecutive weeks. I know we do it for like, a good bit, and then something happens on a Thursday, and then we have to move the day, and we're 2 weeks straight in. 2 weeks on the straight and narrow at 7 o'clock right here for you guys, 7:05. We hope to be done and wrapped up just in time for you guys to go and enjoy NXT, right? Today's NXT.
Yes.
Today is NXT. Philly. It's not in Philly. There's not any sort of election nonsense to worry about today.
Yeah. So we're back. And so any this week in wrestling news, anything catch anyone's eye or anything they've seen in the wrestling landscape?
Good question.
Are we talking professional or indie
anything? We can talk. This is the beginning of the show is for wrestling talk.
So my kids got to experience their second show, which they kept saying how they enjoyed it more than the other show because they didn't have to sit for 3 hours and do nothing. But I was like, I just got to tell you something, like, not every show is going to be like that. Yeah. Like, you're going to have more shows that have nothing to do.
I think what helps
those jerks of PPW will put you to work. Those jerks of PPW will put you to work.
But they love that. I don't get it. They love it. I was like, have at it.
They were walking around PPW picking up bottles and stuff after the show too.
Yeah.
They were going
to be running that place in 3 years. That's how it happened.
That's how you started. You started picking bottles up. That's how it started for you.
Yeah.
I think Katie wants to be more of a wrestler and Elena wants to be more of like a manager.
It starts with picking up bottles. Then it goes to recording promos, and then it goes to interviewing people, and before you know it, you're the general manager. That's how it works.
You're throwing the bottles again.
I just noticed, BP. Do you and Clutch have the same barber?
You stop that.
I looked in the mirror and thought the exact same thing. I looked in the mirror and thought the exact same thing.
That's funny. I literally, oh my goodness. Yeah, someone said, Alex said, nice haircut in the chat, and I looked at it, and then I was like, that's a face I've seen a lot on TikTok recently, so that blended. Other wrestling news. Your kids went to your first show. That was super dope. And then you got some cool little gifts coming for them soon, courtesy of Ruda, which also Ruda made his return to PPW this week, and stepped down as the PPW GM.
Yep.
And then appointed you, BP Burke.
Yes, me.
The new GM of PPW.
Wow, that place has gone to hell in a handbasket, isn't it?
Yeah.
You already
I'm super proud of you, bud. Like, seriously. Like, I know I say this a bunch, and I think we made a video when I did the tournament, when I presented the Tornado Tag titles, which I still have to post. But like, realistically, I started this podcast. I wasn't expecting anything. And then I brought BP in shortly after, starting it. And he was that right-hand man for me. And through all the ups and downs and everything going on and everything that was happening in my life, dude, you stayed by my side. And I remember saying in the beginning, I was like, bro, I can't pay you. Like, you're really good. You do a lot of good work, and you take pride in this channel, and you take pride in this content. And even though like it's at the Tornado Tag under the ABJ, a whole 9, you've always been cool with me with that. But, I said, bro, I don't even come and work. Just hang out. I'll work hard enough for both of us. I want you as a diehard wrestling fan to have really cool experiences and meet cool people. And that wasn't enough for you. Like, you're like, no, I'm not going to sit here and do nothing. And you dove in head first, and every role that was handed to you, you did as well as I did. And we just really worked up this rank together as podcasters and podcasters don't get what we get, like booking shows and helping and being agents. Like, we never trained. We're just fans who have a decent head on our shoulders about the game. And now you're a GM and helping on the books with wrestling companies. Like, I'm super proud of you, man. It's a cool accomplishment.
And even bigger thing, I was proud of the show. I was proud of the show we put on Saturday. Fun show all around. Some incredible matches. VSK and Nolan Pierce. Holy moly. Ooh. Wow, they tore the house down. Not that anybody else didn't. I've heard great things about pretty much every match up and down the card. And then, whoa, just when you think it's just when you think you've seen everything, here comes Santa Claus. And what a finish. What a finish.
Yeah. That was fun.
Katie was so upset.
Pissed.
She literally she knew he is one of my favorite wrestlers, and she literally was like, "You're on the naughty list."
Yeah.
She made it a point to go tell him. Like
Yeah.
she said it to me, she said it to him. She
like
said
before
it to
the show, we're like, this is like one of the coolest people, like one of the closest people in wrestling that we are like. We told him the story about the guardrail and how we've always been in his corner and how he's just a really good human. And Katie's like, oh, they were both like, oh, okay. But then as soon as Katie's seen Facade,
she loved him. Just
the neon colors, the hair, the spray paint, the flippy moves, it's Facade. And then Rem ruined that moment for her. Like, she literally turned around and looked at me and she was like this.
She was shook. She was like, oh.
After the show, like Rem came up and she
gave it to him.
She went right over to the Facade's table and like
she sat and waited.
She sat and waited for him. Like, she just wanted to like high five. She didn't even ask for a photo. And then she brought how you guys gave her posters. So Paul gave them posters for helping out. She took her poster over to Facade to spray paint his name on it. Like,
cool. She went over and asked him after the show, like still at the guardrail, and he was like, "Oh, I left it in the back. Like, just give me a minute, whatever." And so I said, okay, like, we'll wait until everybody at his table is done. And he got done talking to them, and she was sitting there, and he goes, "Oh, they're still in the back. Like, just give me a few minutes." And I was like, "All right, Katie, just wait for everybody to leave." And she just sat there, and she must have stood there for like a good 15 minutes. And he finally just looked at her and was like, "I got to go get that paint."
Yeah.
she was like, "Thank you so much." She was.
It made her day.
Yeah.
Facade is the epitome of the first guy and last guy out. Him and Danny, their work ethic is unmatched, and their devotion to their fans is unmatched. I'll never forget when your brother was there, and he found out he was on leave from the military, cut off his wrist tape, and gave it right to him.
Yep.
And that was before we had any stroke in that place at all.
Yep.
We were 100%. Just fans.
Yeah.
I love that.
And honestly, like, just to kind of talk, I know this is a heavy PPW talk. If you're listening to this, and you're like, what the hell are you talking about? PPW Wrestling, it's Pennsylvania Premier Wrestling. Check it out. It's on Facebook, YouTube.
At PPW Entertainment. Yep.
Yeah. And that's the show we're talking about, a local show for us. But Facade's the guy in front of the camera for pretty much as long as we've been going to PPW, has been predominantly the face of the company. And
he's the franchise. He's the franchise.
He's the franchise. But it's not just what he does with the fans and at the shows and in between those ropes, like how we said, first in, last out. The other guy who's been a really long-term, like, good dude backstage that hasn't gotten enough has been Rembrandt. Like, in our, like, you know what I mean? Like, both of our eyes, like, there are two people in the back that's like, wow. Like, Rem's driving almost 3.5 hours to be here. So is like, they're both coming from two opposite directions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, car broke down, rented a car just to get there. That's like, Rembrandt.
Yeah. And working hurt, working beat up, all that, like, just really busting his ass. And Facade is is the greatest, in my opinion, in PPW heavyweight champion I think we've ever had. I remember being on the call when he finally won it, because I watched that chase for so long, and then a pandemic. So it was amazing to be on the call that night. I'm bummed I wasn't on the call for the Rembrandt. I'm going to be a little salty about it, but it is what it is. No, but I was very happy. I don't know if I would have been able to sell that as the heel as a straight commentary. I don't think I ever done heel work at PPW. I was always a straight guy, but I don't know if I could have kept it together for Rem. I would have been like, that'd have been tough. It was tough. It was tough to be on the call when Precious won his first championship. Like, I had to step away. I had to step away for a moment. But yeah, that was a really cool moment to see him hold up that title. Anything else? I
know we've seen the expansion of the WWE ID system, which we talked about as a theory last week, because it was just announced, but nobody in particular was announced for it. Since then, I think a little under 10 people have been announced for it. Independent wrestlers who have been identified as WWE ID prospects, who they will be keeping a close eye on, and they'll be trying to create a pathway for them to the WWE someday. And some local people, people we work with. Yeah, absolutely. So we have we have Marcus Mathers, who we've worked with a bit, Zeta Steel, who we've worked with a bit, a lot of other people who we've worked with a bit, who have all been identified in this WWE ID system, and it can't wait until we see what comes of this, and to see some more people, again, some people who are really going to be able to get opportunities that if you go back to pre-AEW, and if AEW does nothing else in professional wrestling, and I guess it was before this, because the NXT system and everything like that has Sean Legacy from AXW, who is a phenomenal talent, is part of this content ID system, or content ID system. What is this, YouTube? The WWE ID system. So what this is basically seems to be doing is, at the very least, it's going to get people some eyeballs on them, some very, very talented athletes, wrestlers, whatever you want to call them, that are going to be able to really have a bit of a spotlight, and hopefully find a way to get there. Because I love the Obafemis of the world, the Tiffany Strattons of the world, the shot putters and the gymnasts, but there's nothing that really takes the place of being between those two ropes. I mean, I'm not a wrestler, I never will be, but I've seen so many great people come up through there, and you had like generations of people who never had that opportunity because it was just WWE. And if you weren't their mold, if you weren't that 6'4" muscle guy, maybe had a dad who was a wrestler too, they weren't paying a whole lot of attention to you for a long, long time.
Yeah, and we want to talk about people who, you know, put time between those ropes. That is a Marcus Mathers. That kid's been doing it longer than most, like backyard or doing everything he has. We actually watched him win his first cash-in Money in the Bank at the IWTV 100 in that crazy ass ladder match. Now the kid's an ID. But yeah, Sean Legacy is someone who worked the Northeast scene a little bit, even though he's from Georgia. Zeta Steel, we got to see a little bit. Another Northeast extension. I never got to work with him, but I'm very familiar with him. Bryce Donovan is going to be on that list. Marcus Mathers, Sam Holloway from Ohio. He's made some rounds in this area. Jack Summit, or you know him as Jack Cartwheel.
Yeah, Jack Cartwheel. Yeah, one of my favorite, I never heard of the guy, but instantly a fan, is Cold Brew Cappuccino Jones from Coffeeville, Kansas. Like, oh, that's great. Oh, I love that.
That's a good one.
Wonderful.
Here's a thing too to kind of think about. That's his independent name. Like, they're not trying to like change the character as of yet. You know what I mean?
It seems like they did with Jack Cartwheel. It seems like they're going to get away from that. But whatever, it remains to be seen who's going to keep their names, who's going to not keep their names, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see who all goes there and how it works out. We have our theories. Some of it scares me a little bit, I'm not going to lie. And there's aspects that I think can be good, but things that can be pretty bad about this too.
It's a waiting game, and hopefully it's beneficial to the talent. That's my hope. Hopefully, it's
no disrespect to anybody on that list and people I've worked with. I love you all to death, Zeta included. But man, that Marcus one means that one's cool. That's one that I'm like, if this is a positive thing, God, I want Marcus to get something positive. But if it's a giant piece of shit scam and it messes over Marcus, WWE, you're dead to me. I'm keeping it a buck. Like, you fuck over Marcus with this ID,
we're coming
done.
For you.
I will never support that brand.
By the way, ppwwrestling.com/shop for your Zeta Steel rookie cards.
I heard there's not a lot left. You guys are snatching them up.
They're flying like hotcakes, or whatever sells more than hotcakes these days.
Zeta cards.
There you go. Yeah. Get them while they last.
Absolutely. All right. We've done enough filibustering here. Go support your local wrestling, all that great stuff. Once again, before we get into the main topic, if you guys want to check out the links below to follow, all ABJ links are there. Our merchandise is all there. If you grab a t-shirt or any merchandise, take a photo in that merchandise and send it to us so we can put it on social medias. Also, you can check out Lily's stuff. She's got her own channel. She's still working on doing some stuff there. We're going to be doing some content together. And BP doesn't really have any links to plug except go support PPW. Go and AXW Wrestling and Pilgrim.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's where I'll be this weekend. I'll be at Brews Giving in Ponce, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I might be running the camera. Let's get into what I'm doing.
Yeah, let's get into the topic. Let's go over the history of the United States Championship.
Well, that bodes the question which one, because there's been a lot of United States Championships. throughout the history of professional wrestling and major ones too. So if you want to go back to the source, you want to go back to the OG, and it's not the same one that's around today. It's one that is kind of faded into the ether. And that would be originally was the Chicago Championship, later the Detroit Championship, sort of the brainchild of originally Fred Kohler, later became controlled by the original Sheik when he ran the Detroit territory, which that stuff is so influential. If you look at like what's going on now with JCW, if you look what's going on before that with Sabu and his ascension and everything like that, it was very, very, very much the effect of where this title started. And this was territorial wrestling. This was the NWA, where the championships didn't have the same kind of hold they have now. They didn't have the same kind of rules they have now, where every company kind of has their own championship. The NWA was completely built on the idea of a traveling world champion. So you had all these different territories, and there's this agreement. I stay in my zone, you stay in your zone, and we share the world champion. There's one heavyweight champion of the world, and he doesn't belong to any one of us. So each territory had the ability. You couldn't have a world champion. You couldn't have a world junior champion, but you could have anything else. So there were many, many, many different versions of the NWA World Tag Team title. There were many, many different versions of the United States title, the one we're going to be talking about tonight. But that was the original, and it winds up becoming the centerpiece title of Big Time Wrestling, which was the promotion run by the original Sheik, just one of the greatest heels that ever lived, Sabu's uncle. And he was the man in Detroit wrestling for a long, long time until that territory faded and that title faded with him. But the one we still have today, the one that is held in the centerpiece of that graphic by LA Knight, that is the one that can be traced back to the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling United States title. Because that's what you basically did. If you were an NWA member, you could have a champion, just not the world champion. If you even look, even to Hogan, even when Vince pulled out until late 80s, they would never, and even then, even to this day, except now that you have like Gunther's the world heavyweight champion, but you very rarely heard them call the WWE champion the WWE world champion. It was always just the WWE champion. That is a vestigial remnant of the territory days when, even though they didn't acknowledge whomever it may be, Harley Race or Jack Briscoe or Dory Funk Jr. as their world champion, because they had Bruno or they had Pedro Morales or they had Superstar Billy Graham. They called Bruno and Pedro and all these other guys the WWF champion, because the world champion was the NWA world champion.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Mid-Atlantic Pro Wrestling, even though they have this reputation as being a tag team territory, their big thing is the North American title. That is the main singles title. That's the one that Johnny Valentine had. He was the big guy in the territory for a while. Blackjack Mulligan, Wahoo McDaniel, Ric Flair, Roddy Piper, whomever it may be. That was the guy locally. And that's where that title starts. And that's where that title is for a while, because in the 70s and the 80s, the Crockett's are doing well. The Crockett's are successful. To the point I know on the old version of this show, we talked about Jim Crockett Jr. and how, they own baseball and stuff, but wrestling's what paid the bills. Wrestling was their cash cow. But they were not represented on a national level until the early 80s. They never, because you got to think back to the way the NWA used to work. You had a 9-member board. They would get together in their convention once a year, every year, usually in Las Vegas, and they would vote on who gets to be the champion this year. Are we not changing the title? Are we changing the title? Are we changing the title a couple times? And it was a very political process. And for a while, Harley Race had a stranglehold on it. And before that, you had Dory Funk Jr. had it for a while. Terry Funk had it for a while. You had all these other, Jack Briscoe, and people were just mentioning. But Mid-Atlantic was kind of left out. So unless the NWA champion was coming through town, the main guy, the main single star, was that United States champion. It was their main title. If you look at that very old one where the title actually looks like the United States of America, it's shaped like that.
Yeah.
And So this kind of starts to change around the ascension of Starrcade. 1983, 1984, wrestling changes in a big, big way. Now, 83 is when Vincent K. McMahon, the Vince McMahon we all know, buys the company from his father, pulls out of the NWA. Everybody knows, okay, we're in a fight. He's going to go national now. And a lot of the forces of the NWA are starting to coalesce around Jim Crockett. Crockett had actually gotten a title run for Ric Flair back in 1981, but it flipped back to Race fairly quickly, Harley Race. And then by 1983, when Ric Flair wins it again at Starrcade on Thanksgiving in 1983, from then on, for the most part, Jim Crockett has control over that NWA World title. Yes, Kerry Von Erich wins it for like a month. Harley Race won it back for a little bit, but it's essentially as Vince McMahon picks off the rest of the territories one by one, and they start to really, really struggle and really, really fade. Ric Flair's the man in the NWA, and he's Jim Crockett's guy. So that is basically where we're at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that happening, we run into an issue where the United States title is now starting to segue from the main title in Mid-Atlantic Wrestling. It is now going to be basically what the Intercontinental title has become to the WWF at that point. Mm-hmm. It is your secondary title. It is your title under the champion. And that's still fairly important because, yeah, Ric Flair is a Mid-Atlantic guy, but the NWA still has a traveling world champion. And Ric Flair might be in Texas this month to wrestle Kerry Von Erich. He might be in Florida to wrestle, like Dusty's in Mid-Atlantic at this point. He might be in Florida to wrestle Bob Orton Jr. or Bob Roop or somebody. He might be in whatever is left of the NWA territories. He might be in Kansas City wrestling Harley. He might be in Amarillo wrestling one of the Funks. But at this point, the World Class is pulled out of the NWA shortly after Kerry has the title run. But you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still a very important title, but Ric Flair's around a lot more now, so it's not quite as important. But it's still super, super, super big. Like there's so many, like if you look at that mid 80s section of time, that's when you have like Tully Blanchard and Magnum TA fighting over it. Flair's the world champion, so Dusty's going to have the U.S. title. They use it to make Nikita Koloff. They use it to and that's what they would typically use it for. It was a stepping stone title because you have the TV title, which is going to be the one that's defended on television all the time. But the U.S. title is still very important. They really, really used it. And this is where I come in as a fan and not like as just knowing my history. I like when I think of that NWA/WCW US title, I'm thinking Lex Luger. Lex Luger's the guy I immediately think of. And that's how they really elevated him and kept him hot, even though he would try against Flair and come up short a little bit consistently.
You want to get mad at me?
Okay.
You know what I think when I think of the U.S. Championship?
What's that?
So, wasn't in the
David
Attitude
Flair?
Era, right?
Okay.
And I refused to watch WCW,
right.
So I didn't care about it when it was there. I did not watch the Ruthless Aggression era, and I joined in probably Modern Era. So I joined around a certain time. So when I think the U.S. Championship, my favorite so far has probably been The Miz.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
I didn't see that coming.
Yep.
I
mean, Kevin Owens was a fun champion, but The Miz was like, it's funny because I think Miz for just a secondary title guy for the most part. Like if he wasn't holding down the IC, he was holding down the US.
Yeah. See, my favorite Miz run when he was Intercontinental champion, and specifically when they first did that brand split, and he was like a really great heel carrying SmackDown character-wise. The arguments with Danielson on Talking Smack, he was so good for a while there. I mean, he's always good. He's a very entertaining guy who doesn't get his just desserts, but he was really good there for a while. But yeah, I'm just thinking like, okay, this is my formative exposure to the U.S. title, and then Luger, and they would have him drop it to people like they would have him drop it to people who seemed almost random, like Michael Hayes. I think we talked about it in the Freebirds episode. Michael Hayes gets it for a while. Stan Hansen, who is one of the all-time great brawlers, a legend, Hall of Famer, but not really somebody you would expect to be there because he wasn't like a regular fixture in WCW or NWA. He wins it for a while, but Luger wins it back at Starrcade. And then
You want to
Luger
hear something wild? Sorry to cut you off.
No.
Miz wins his first U.S. championship October 5th, 2009. Do you know where he wins it?
I do not.
Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and then
how
goes on
about
a 200 and he goes on a 224-day streak with it.
That's awesome.
Those were the days when they seemed to not really care who was the U.S. champion.
Yeah,
that's
funny. That's funny that he won it in Wilkes-Barre.
There was, I would say, the dark ages of the U.S. title are really from when, almost from when it came back. But I guess you could say after like JBL and Mysterio and those guys had it to when John Cena had it and he was doing the Open Challenge every week. That Open Challenge was when they really, you could tell like very recently there have been times where they really do try to pay attention and really do try to bring value to the secondary titles, and there's times when they're not. Like right now, we're in a great time for that. That U.S. title, say what you will about the guy, Logan Paul did a great job, even though he rarely defended it, of putting some notoriety behind that title, and LA Knight's carrying the torch with it.
I think LA Knight's kind of boring with it, to be honest. You know who else won a U.S. championship in Wilkes-Barre?
I know who didn't win the U.S.
Samoa Joe.
I was gonna say I know who didn't win the U.S. title in Wilkes-Barre.
Austin
Theory.
Austin Theory. Yeah, we walked out of that.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
So,
yeah.
But if you go back after Luger drops it, you still have a really strong heyday of Sting, and one of the great reigns is ravishing Rick Rude in the early '90s with a Dangerous Alliance, because Vader is your world champion, but Rick Rude is every bit as over as Vader as the United States champion. You could have flipped them, and Rick Rude could have been the world champion quite easily.
Yeah.
And he did have some back injuries and some things where, and he had great feuds with Steamboat and Dustin Rhodes winds up winning it anyway. But they wind up with Dustin flipping it to Steve Austin, and Austin flipping it to Rick Steamboat, and then the less said about that afterward, the better, because
it's kind of weird. WWE was on the Intercontinental Champion and didn't use a lot of foreign people at all, or showcase them very often. And WCW was like, America first, U.S. championship, and was more catering to foreign talent and working with foreign companies than WWE ever did.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only one I can think of is, well, I mean, I guess Conan, but yeah, that's the era we're starting to get to, because it, like, the one thing that everyone's like, ugh, is when Ricky Steamboat has to retire and he surrenders the title to Steve Austin at Fall Brawl, and here comes Hacksaw Jim Duggan, tough guy, in his WCW debut, and he's going to beat Steve Austin in like 37 seconds to win that thing. So that's something that was a little
fun fact. That is the shortest reign title.
Well, yeah, because Austin had it from like Starrcade to, I want to say, a Clash of the Champions. So he had it for like 6 months or 7 months, but then he lost it to Steamboat. Steamboat lost it by forfeit, and yeah, it was the Dean Douglas thing all over again. He immediately lost it to Duggan, and Duggan keeps it for a bit. It winds up getting held up, and then Sting has it, and this is where it starts to get into some dark ages, where not dark ages, just it wasn't really an emphasized part of the show when Nitro first started. They were working very heavily with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and New Japan is probably the biggest wrestling company in the world in 1995. Until WCW really starts to take off in 96 with the NWO. And so Kensuke Sasaki beats Sting for the title. And then they do a thing. It was either before Starrcade 95 or before World War III 95, where they have a match where Kensuke Sasaki is defending the U.S. title against One Man Gang, who was for legendary territory heel and maybe known more from some people by being Akeem in the WWF. But One Man Gang is One Man Gang again. And they do a thing where Gang gets a 3 count, parades around with the title, but the referee says Sasaki got the shoulder up. And then they restart the match and Sasaki wins. And all they ever showed in the United States was the 1, 2, 3 and Gang parading around with the title, and they said it was a title change. Now, that was the plan. That wasn't like a screw job or anything. But they didn't. They showed the real version in Japan, so Sasaki could save face. And yeah, Conan winds up with it, and eventually they do try to rehab the title a bit by getting Ric Flair in there. And then it really does hit a memorable spot where it's guys like DDP and Eddie Guerrero. Flair loses the belt to Eddie Guerrero. Dean Malenko has it for a little bit. And it becomes almost like a cruiserweight title for the people who have graduated out of the cruiserweight division. Are you frozen? I think I may have lost you here. I don't know if it's on my end or your end. I do not know if I am still connected here. Oh, I am still connected here. There I am.
It's on my end. Keep going.
Okay. Good. So with that, you then wind up with it being traded back and forth. Raven winds up with it when he comes in, and then Goldberg winds up with it. And it's still firmly the secondary title. There was some time in the mid 80s where, especially when Dusty was in the mix, the TV title, which we would call the world television title sometimes, so Dusty could call himself a world champion. There were times when that was considered like the main the secondary title. But by the time he hit the 90s, by the time he hit Lex Luger being the champion, it is firmly the main belt. Or not the main belt, but the secondary belt. And quite a good one. It was always a strong stepping stone. I mean, and even too late in, there was points when it was at its biggest Vince Russo nightmare booking hellscape in like 99 and 2000. But the best thing on the show is Lance Storm in Team Canada, and they had Lance Storm at one point win every title but the world title. And some of it was awful. Like Lance Storm did a great job with the angle, and it was done well, where him being so dry was beneficial to it. But like they did stupid stuff, like the hardcore title became like the Saskatchewan Hardcore International title. Get it? The SHIT title. And little things like that. But and the US title became the Canadian title. And I wanted them to do that later. I wanted them to do that later. One of my favorite things Claudio Castagnoli did before he was in WWE, before he became Cesaro, in Ring of Honor, he did this whole thing about how he was very European and just acting like he was this elitist, European guy who looks down on Americans and how they act. And when he won that US title, I really, really, really wanted him to get rid of it and
rehash that.
Bring back the very European title. It would have been amazing. Yeah. but they never did that. And even to the end, Booker T is the last US champion of the actual WCW. But then on the last Nitro, he also beat Scott Steiner for the world title. And then they wind up, when they come over to the WWE merger, he winds up just, I think, giving it to Chris Kanyon. I hate when people are given titles. And that was a point where WWE was doing that a lot. Just, you're the champion now. And he hands
it to Chris Kanyon.
So they do that little run with the WCW US title until the Invasion angle kind of reaches its natural conclusion at the Survivor Series in 2001, and then it goes on the shelf for a while until they decide to bring it back in, I believe, 2003. I'm not looking at it right in front of me.
Yep.
And it's been around ever since.
So it also became, at that point in time too, it was bounced between shows. It was a show belt.
Yeah, it was initially the SmackDown title.
Yeah. And so it started with, and the guy to bring it back was Eddie. Eddie brought it back. Yeah,
because it was Eddie over there, and then they because they had briefly gotten rid of the Intercontinental title on Raw, just to kind of really make that World Heavyweight title, since it was the only singles title, it was a men's singles title. It kind of emphasized its importance. And when they brought that back, it was Christian, and then on the other side it was Guerrero.
And then it left SmackDown, went to ECW, then back to SmackDown.
Went to ECW.
Shelton Benjamin was the U.S. champion in ECW in July. He won it in July. I'm looking at that, July 20th, 2008. He won it at Great American Bash, and he held it for 242 days.
I don't know if he was in ECW that whole time with that.
That's probably longer than ECW was a company, right?
No, that ECW lasted for about, I want to say, they brought it back in 2006. I want to say it was around until, like, when did Nexus happen? Nexus happened in 2010,
I'm not sure. Then it says it bounces from Shelton to Montel Porter.
MVP,
yeah. Sorry, yeah. I'm an idiot. I'm high as fuck for 72 days, and it was on SmackDown, and then left him and went to Raw for Kofi.
Yeah, they every now and then they would flip the secondary titles, or sometimes
it went
flip the heavyweight titles.
It went from Sheamus on Raw to Kofi on SmackDown for 48 days, then back to Raw for 181 days, and then it was an unbranded title for a while. All
of when?
2016, it looks like, or
Well,
2011 to 2016, it was an unbranded title.
Yeah, so there was a good stretch there where there wasn't a roster split. There was you had a brand extension, whatever you want to call it. There was a while where it was pretty hard and fast. You had a brand split, and then there was a point where SmackDown just became such an afterthought that it was around WrestleMania, I guess a little before WrestleMania 30, because you still had like Sheamus as the champion there, Mark Henry was a SmackDown champion, but by the time they unified the titles and even a little before that, so I don't think they unified the titles until 2013, but they were doing the Raw, they would call it the Raw Super Show. It was around the time it went 3 hours, and the whole idea was SmackDown is such an afterthought that everybody's going to be on Raw, and SmackDown's just going to be a clear B show. Where right now it's fairly even. If anything, Raw's been the B show because Roman's been on SmackDown, Cody's been on SmackDown, all your big stuff has been on SmackDown, and Raw is kind of the B show, especially when SmackDown was on Fox and it's network TV. Although now it might flip back because they're saying Netflix wants everybody. Netflix is like, we want Roman, we want Punk, we want Cody Rhodes, we want everybody. They kind of have a big laundry list of people they want on their show when Netflix or Raw moves to Netflix in January. But either way, they are there was a time where both titles were kind of everybody was on every show, or at least everybody was on Raw, and if somebody wasn't super important, they were on SmackDown. But I always think of, when I'm thinking of the brand split era, I always think of, and it wasn't always this way, but I always think of the US title as being SmackDown's title and the Intercontinental title being Raw's title, because that's when you had like MVP and Matt Hardy feuding over the US title. That's when you had He Who Shall Not Be Named as the US champion, and John Cena, and then they said he got stabbed in a nightclub and he lost the belt to Carlito. But his first big pay-per-view moment, his first big WrestleMania moment in a match is WrestleMania 20, the opener, beating Big Show for the US title.
So I'm looking at a tweet just came across. Do we know anybody who works for Beyond Wrestling?
Beyond Wrestling, I know there is I know it's a Massachusetts thing.
Yeah. Wait, is this Brad Baylor right here?
I wouldn't know. I can't see it.
That's not Brad, is it?
Yeah, it is.
That's Brad Baylor?
That definitely looks like Brad Baylor.
Okay. So I'm just saying, we know some people. You got Brad Baylor is a guy we know there. Becca is up there. Miracle Generation's up there. Bobby Orlando's up there. We know him pretty well. CPA's up there. Ichiban. Pretty much a lot of people who have been already ID'd as WB prospects. All work at Beyond. But just announced at the Northern Crown show, Beyond Wrestling will announce 2 more WWE ID members that will be announced in a couple weeks here at Beyond Wrestling.
Interesting. Yeah. One at Beyond Wrestling and one at Northern Crown Wrestling, which is in Toronto. That's going to be the first international announcement. For the first time, someone in Canada has been ID'd. They're teasing.
Yeah.
So going to be very interesting to see who is going to be announced there. I do see that. Speaking of Brad Baylor, he's going to be challenging for the tag titles that show on the 14th.
I listen. We could dance around it. We personally think.
First time I saw that kid, I'm like, he's gonna get signed someday.
Yeah.
We think that kid's on the ID. Not if.
Yeah. Just
no, I don't know that. I don't know that too. I don't know that it's bad.
We don't know any instant. Yeah.
But no, like I'm literally when I met him about a year ago when he first came to PPW last December, and he was 19 years old, carried himself like a professional, and had a absolute hell of a match with VSK.
Movie star look too.
And has that stereotypical WWE look. I'm like, okay, well, this kid's getting signed someday. It was that simple. Yeah. And if he's on that path now, that's great. If it's not, then that's fine too. But yeah, definitely. And hey, he just had a really fun match with Facade at PPW over the weekend. So
sure did, absolutely did.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see who gets what when.
So do we have any more history of the title here? Or?
I mean, we could talk about the more recent history, some of the best moments of it. We kind of went over where it's been and all that stuff. I think very recently the whole, not so recently, but I thought Rusev had a really good run when he was first coming in as a monster heel, and he comes out in the tank against John Cena at SummerSlam. I thought that was a very fun one. I brought up the Cesaro thing, but yeah, it has really kind of been rehabbed, and the John Cena's run after he beat Rusev was a big part of that. That was so memorable when people would just come in and answer open challenges. Like, unfortunately, one with Sami Zayn injured his shoulder as he was making his entrance, but there's always been a really there's been quite a few really fun things, and I would say that not just that 11 to 16 era you were talking about where it was kind of open up, that wasn't just the dark ages for the US title, that was kind of the dark ages for WWE booking. For a lot of things that like you would have these brief sparks like the pipe bomb or things like that. CM Punk was another guy with I know he had the Intercontinental title. I think he had the US title too, but you would have these sparks like Nexus when it first started and things that were interesting. But by and large, there were some times where it was a drag. But yeah, no, the US titles had some fun stuff. I know they did a thing. I hated it at the time, but now I look back and I'm like, okay, that was fine. That was fun. When David Flair was the US champion and he was clearly an inept wrestler and everybody and their mother was helping him win, that was always fun.
Yeah. So I do got some things. So the first champion is Harley Race. The most reigns is Ric Flair at 6. The longest reign is Lex Luger at 523 days. His third reign as champion. The shortest reign is Steve Austin at 5 minutes. His second reign.
Or Steve Austin.
The oldest champion, Terry Funk, at 56 years old, at 84 days.
So Terry Funk wins it back in the 70s. We were talking about like the different phases
at 56.
No, he wasn't 56.
I know.
He wins it when it is the main title of the Mid-Atlantic Territory. In the 70s,
he was on his 30th retirement by then.
Well, his horse was sick, so he had to retire. I think it was right before his first retirement.
I still don't believe he's dead. I think he's coming back any day. This is another fake retirement. Yeah.
Look, if anybody is tough enough to beat death, it's Terry Funk. If anybody can do it, if it's possible, it's Terry Funk's gonna find a way.
Yeah.
But no, he came back to WCW at the very, very end. Like as they were closing up shop. This is like late 2000, early 2001. And Vince Russo is out because he's having some injury issues from when he was trying to do wrestling stuff. And it's also a time where the booking is kind of being done by this loose collaboration of like Jimmy Hart and Bill Banks and a few other people. And so, yeah, at that point, they do have a moment where Terry Funk wins. I think this was around the same time he had a match where like he got him or the guy he was wrestling. I think it was him against Candido. One of them got kicked by a horse, like legit.
Really?
Yeah. And I think it was Chris Candido he was wrestling.
That's sick.
But yeah, there was a point where he won the US title in like 2000 when he was in his 50s.
Yeah. And then we have the youngest champion, David Flair, at 20 years old for 121 days. The heaviest champion is the Big Show at 500 pounds. And the lightest champion
Go ahead.
Kalisto at 170.
Yeah, Kalisto had traded it back and forth with Del Rio a little bit. And it's funny when you said the heaviest champion, like, oh yeah, one man gang. I'm like, oh yeah, the Big Show did win it. We were just talking about that.
Yeah,
the Big Show did have it.
Combined record days we're at if you do combined recorded by WWE or without is Ric Flair. I'm sorry, Lex Luger at 950 days. Ric Flair at 773 days. I think only modern day people that still are even close is John Cena at 403 at 5 reigns. Sheamus at 362 days. Dean Ambrose 531. So I'm going through the list. Miz is still up there for a pretty nice run. Austin Theory at 333 days, but sitting at number sitting at number 20, Logan Paul at 273 days.
And what, like 2 defenses?
Yeah, the longest single reigning defining the champion, only one to reign, but he was the longest run to do it for one time. Rick Rude at 378. Then Dean Ambrose had it one time for 351 days. Nikolai Volkov had it one time for 328.
Nikita Koloff, you mean?
Nikita Koloff. I'm high. Barry Windham at number 19 for 283 days, and then Logan Paul with one reign at 273. So some pretty impressive single reign title defenses there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That's pretty much all I have. My little fun facts that I pulled up. I thought that were kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, my phone's blowing up. The life of a general manager is never done.
Guys. Well, let's get some plugs and get out of here, BP. Let's talk about this next.
Let's talk about what we're going to be doing coming up here. I think that's a good place to start.
Next episode, we will be doing
Survivor
Series or War Games?
Question mark.
What do you want to do next?
War Games. Let's do War Games next.
The match beyond. A lot of those people who are former United States champions are part of that. Are part of that lineage of the War Games. One of the things I think
on the board.
My bad. I think he may not be joining us live tonight, but I think I think Ryan Vox would have our heads if we didn't bring up the legendary feud between Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard over the United States title, the best of 7 series and all that went with it. So a lot of those early War Games, those people in them, the Barry Windhams and Flairs and Nikita, Dusty, Blanchard, a lot of those guys.
Also, huge thanks for today's episode. Raz requested the history of the U.S. Championship. So this is a requested episode. I forgot to say that in the top of the show. But yeah, War Games will be next, and after War Games will be Survivor Series. We're gonna do a Survivor Series watch back, and then we'll kick off December with Eddie Guerrero.
That sounds good to me. Yeah, the War Games is going to be fun to me because some of my absolute favorite WCW matches, including my period favorite WCW match, are War Games matches. War Games 91, such a great story, such a great that's everybody's homework assignment. If you have Peacock or whatever WWE content is on in your area, you can watch a bunch of War Games. There's only a handful of them. You know what I couldn't believe, and this is just a little teaser for next week. One of the people who has the almost is up there for the most War Games appearances at this point is actually Io Sky.
Wow.
She's
really?
She was in all of them in NXT, and she's been in a bunch of them in WWE since they moved them up to WWE. She has been in. This is going to be like her I think she's going to be 10th all time and as the most appearances in War Games. Flair's got to be number 1. I would imagine.
No.
He's not. Sting
is.
Okay. Yeah, but Io Sky is 10th. They're going to be 10th, assuming she's in this year's. She's been in a ton of them.
So it's 13 is number 1. Number 2 is 8, and it's tied. Number 3 is 6, and it's a 3-way tie. And then behind that is 5 matches, and it's a 4-way tie. And EO is part of that 4-way tie for 5 matches. So this year she'll bump to 6, and she will be active wrestler, the most active wrestler with most War Game matches.
I'm surprised that Sting has more than Flair because Sting wasn't in some of the early ones.
They credit Sting for having 13 matches in War Games.
In War Games?
Yeah, he's the only double-digit War Game person.
I don't... Unless they did some on
next
house
in
shows
line
and
is
stuff.
8 matches with Lex Luger, Koloff, Anderson, Wyndham, one-man gang. Then 5 matches is Pillman, Sky, Flair.
One man gang.
Yeah, that's what it says.
One man gang was not in that many war. I don't think one man gang was ever in a War Games. Are you looking at the U.S. title?
No, I'm looking at War Game matches.
Hold on. I am willing to lay money down. I don't know about that, but I'm very, very certain that the one man gang was never in a War Games.
You may be right. I'm just looking at a website, and everything on the internet's real. Hold on, I
saw it on the internet.
Oh, this is WWE War Game list, which has
one man gang
Adam
definitely
Cole,
was in the WWE War Game.
Essentially, Undisputed Era is dominating that list. Yeah, this one says
they were in
5 appearances.
They were the first
NWA appearances. Hawk and Animal have 13 appearances. Dusty has 11. Lex has 13. Sting has 7 in the NWA alone. WCW, Sting has 12 appearances. Lex Luger has 6. One Man Gang has 5.
One Man Gang was not in 5 War Games. No.
This is I'm telling you, he has 5. He hasn't won one of them, but he's One Man Gang is credited for
unless they were doing them on house shows.
Now we gotta that's our homework. We gotta figure out what War Game matches One Man Gang is credited on Wikipedia and another website for 5 appearances.
Yeah, this is now that I'm thinking of it, I'm guessing they okay. Yes, I'm learning things here. So yeah, it looks like they did do someone that weren't like pay-per-view or TV. Because some of these are definitely not ones that. Okay, so when they would do the Great American Bash, they would just do them like around the loop. It seems.
Yeah.
So here we go. East Rutherford, New Jersey, July 3rd, 1991. Sting, Lex Luger, the Yellow Dog, and Elegante beat Barry Windham, Nikita Koloff, Kevin Sullivan, and the One Man Gang. That was not a televised War Game. So makes sense. And then they did the same thing. This is also why Sting has so many of them. I'm guessing. Yeah. And who knew? I didn't know Elegante had that many War Games. Cactus Jack was in a War Games. I was just thinking.
News to me.
We just found out War Games wasn't always televised.
Yeah, well, I know, like back in the day, like the Great American, but I didn't know they were doing it like 1991.
I guess we're gonna have some more research.
All right, BP, what do you want to plug before we get out of here? We got 2 minutes before NXT starts.
We already talked about PPW enough. That's my big thing. We talked about it. PPW Entertainment.
Well, we have a while before December shows pop up. So PPW Entertainment. I'll be at New Era this Saturday. So come out to New Era Pro Wrestling in the Falcons Nest and in not Mayfield. Mm-hmm. Is it Mayfield? Mayfield, Pennsylvania. Mayfield. And then if you're in the area.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Bruce giving this Saturday as well. Come out to Pottsville, Pennsylvania. And also, if you're bored and you're local and you're in the 570, come out and hang out with us Friday night at Black Diamond. We're going to be doing some Harry Potter trivia. Oh,
there's another thing if you're local. Thursday night, Pilgaroo Pro Wrestling Club at Pilgaroo Brewing.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. All right.
The things.
We'll see you guys next time. Lily, anything you want to plug?
I think you got just about all of that. Oh, we have I have a tornado tag. 5 questions coming out this weekend or this Friday.
There you go. Lily's doing some 5 questions tornado tag edition with her brand new. Oh, look at this guy in the little mouse in the corner.
Another guy.
Does he call me a rat? Is that what he's doing?
Look, another guy was great to see at PPW this weekend.
It was very, very good to see Alex there. Kayfabe aside,
No, you hate him.
I tried to kick him again. I tried to kick him right in front of the girls. I said, "Girls, remember the guy I told you I kicked in the face?"
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I will have you thrown out of there.
Yeah.
I also will be at New Era on Saturday doing
ring announcing,
but not in ring. And also my kids will be there selling my stuff. So go buy some.
Those kids are workers
and whatnot. Yeah, they love it though. They're all about it.
Setting up the show, working the gimmick table.
Snatch my belt.
They're like
loving the belt.
They're like Mr. Perfect against Hogan. Yeah, there you go. They're gonna break it. It's gonna become the hardcore title.
It might be
There you go.
the IC might become the hardcore soon. But that'll do it for Tornado Tag. We'll catch you on the next time, guys. Go enjoy NXT. If you're listening to this on audio, please leave a 5-star review. Leave us little comments on Spotify if you're listening there. If you're listening to it, screenshot it and take a photo and put it up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and say, hey, I'm checking out this podcast, and you should too. Invite some friends. Word of mouth is how we grow. So let's get more of that growth going. Head over on YouTube and subscribe to us over there. And also the High Tension Wrestling Network. Subscribe to those channels. They have a lot of cool stuff coming up very, very soon. We'll see you on the next Tornado Tag. We're out of here.
It's war.
War game.